I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss. More than this, I wish you love.
Welcome to the Forgiveness Solution Podcast. I'm your host, Rev Misty Tyme. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to find me, Rev Misty, please look on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that wonderful social media. Also, you can find me right here at the Sacred Stories stream with other amazing podcasts. Also, at Sacred Stories, you can find Owl Magazine, Wit and Wisdom for Now. I do have some wonderful articles in some past editions. Please look them up. Let me know what you think. Well, today on the Forgiveness Solution Podcast, I'm really excited to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart: marriage, long-term relationships, and forgiveness. Today, I'm honored that Archie Lee, he's an author, he's a speaker, he's a motivational speaker, and most importantly, he's a husband and he's a father. He's also a major in the United States Army with 18 years of service. Archie, can you say hello to our audience?
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. A nice sunny day.
And we're so excited to talk about what you are an expert in, which is relationships. Forgiveness is one of those things that I think in marriage we have to practice often, right?
Yes.
Yes. So Archie has written a book, and I love, love, love its name. That's the Way She Is. And could you tell us a little bit about that book? I know that you have taken out some different ways for us to think about females, right? So you're kind of helping the men of the world figure us ladies out.
Yes. Also, too, it's also dedicated to the women, too. But I like to say the book basically talks about the different character personalities that women possess. And what I mean by character personalities, if you look at a movie or you see characters in a movie, you see the good guy, the bad guy. For this book, it talks more about, character personality in the sense that you have the alpha female, you have the independent female, you have the nurturer, and I got 26 different types that I talk about in the book. But have the understanding that a lot of these types in these books women are a combination of these types. For example, an alpha female can be a alpha female at work, also independent, and also hold traditional values at home. So it's a real good book. Yes, the book is real excellent for men and women because it also gives the women an opportunity to identify with those types as well as the men.
And what made you decide to write a book about us lovely ladies?
It's a funny story. Again, I'm in the military, and I was working out at the gym, and some of the guys were talking, and they were talking about the different women they deal with and how they act and all this. And it's like a light bulb popped up in my head, like, ding, it'd be a good book to write because at first the book was more geared towards the men, but the more I started writing about it, the more I started figuring out that this book will also be good for women to read too. So if you're in a relationship, you can read the book and kind of discuss and kind of figure out what type she is, and if that's the type of woman that you like or you prefer.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes especially when we're younger, we really don't realize why or who we're attracted to. And we really need to understand that both men and women, we're different creatures, right? And within that piece itself, there are different types of women and different types of men out there. And sometimes those relationships, they hit together and we don't even know why we're having such troubles.
Well, it's all about compatibility. I think that the biggest thing, and especially if you just start in a relationship, it's the compatibility thing. If you're not compatible, 99% of the time it's not going to work out. Now, I do understand that people change eventually as they grow older, wiser, more experienced in life. But the fact is, if you're here and you're on the left side, they're on the right side, it's hard to bring that compatibility together.
Right, and sometimes opposites don't attract, or they attract, but they don't stick together because there's just too much difference in how they see the world.
And this is just my opinion. I think when you're young, yes, opposites do attract because you do have, certain, for example, women like bad boys, and vice versa. I just think that, yeah, that's a young man or young woman's game versus the older you get, compatibility is the key to a successful relationship and the ability to compromise.
And Archie, yeah, compromise, that's definitely a learned behavior, correct?
Correct.
Well, and Archie, you talked about the difference between being younger and then as you're older. I know that I'm such a different person than I was when I was 19 years old and first married and to my first husband, and I almost feel like I can look back at that young me and I feel kind of sad for me because I really didn't understand who I was. So do you believe that a successful relationship happens when you kind of know who you are?
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to identify yourself, who you are, and what are your plans in life. And usually that starts about 25, 26 years old. I mean, give or take 2 or 3 years difference. But the fact is you got to find out who you are first, and that goes for both men and women.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I'm a mom of 5 or 6. Oh, my gosh, I left off a kid. What was I thinking? Anyway, so I'm a mom of 6, and most of them are grown. And grown is, in their 20s and one in their early 30s. And, I look at them and I'm like, oh, you don't even know who you really are yet. And that's so hard to tell a young person because they don't feel like that, right? And I know that you help mentor some young people. What is your best piece of advice for a younger person, maybe in their early 20s, that kind of thing, to let them know that relationships, what's some keys to good relationships at that age?
Well, I will start out, I think if you're in your 20s, I wouldn't focus too hard being in a stable relationship. I think that experience can be the best teacher. I think it's good to go out and meet different people because you get different perspectives. And I'm talking just in a dating or a social interaction type deal. I don't think you should get so bottled down in trying to be in a long-term relationship when you're young. And that's just an opinion of mine.
From your ears to every young person, young girl, high school girl who thinks they just met their forever person, which I do know some people who've been together since high school, but it is tough. That's the part that when you're young, you don't really realize how tough a long-term relationship is because, stuff happens. People get sick, parents get sick, jobs change, or unfortunately people lose jobs. You have financial difficulties. These are long-term skills that we build up over time, and it's so hard to tell a young person that, isn't it? Or for them to believe you anyway.
It is hard. It's difficult to tell them, but, and I guess sometimes I preach a little bit too much, but I always tell people, get your education first, get the job you want, get your finances correct, and then start looking towards some type of long-term relationship. But also make sure the person you're dating is thinking the same way, and that goes back to compatibility. If you got that person, if you're doing something, you're trying to, for example, you're trying to invest in a house or a home, you should be meeting someone that's also trying to do the same thing and looking towards the same thing. This is so important, the compatibility deal, because if not, your relationship is going to end in disaster every time. I pretty much guarantee that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely people need to be on the same page, have the same goals, want the same thing long term in their life, right?
Right.
Right. All right. So now we talked about picking well, right? Picking well is important, and your book is going to be helpful for those men and women out there. But also, say you are married. Let's talk about how to have a healthy relationship and where forgiveness fits in marriage.
Okay. Well, I think first of all, starting off with a healthy relationship is the communication process. You should be able to talk to one another, and discuss things. I think one of the biggest problems, another problem, especially with a long-term relationship, is the ability to communicate and the ability to compromise. And I think with that, it's probably the hardest thing in a long-term relationship because people, again, I think, and this is just my opinion, I think people tend to grow away from one another. And once you start growing away from one another, then you have these outside factors coming in and interfering. And that's what usually leads to, adultery, divorce, and numerous things. So,
well, what about some marriages? They definitely just kind of get the doldrums, you know what I mean? They kind of, you said it, they kind of grow apart. And then that person that was so exciting and wonderful 10, 15 years ago is not quite as exciting and wonderful. And what tips can you give our Forgiveness Solution listeners about how to avoid that?
I think one way to avoid that is to always do something different. Try something different. If you've been vacationing in the same spot the last 4 or 5 years, do something this time. Do something spontaneous. I think excitement is the key to keep the marriage or the long-term relationship interesting. And there are a lot of things you could do. Me and my wife, we're always doing different things. We're going different places. We're eating at different restaurants. We don't do the routine, even though I'm in the military. We don't, as my wife and myself, we don't do the routine thing. So I think changing your routines up is good.
Right, it's definitely the spice of life, right? You got to keep things spicy in your marriage. You've got to do new things together, and maybe then their little issues that irritate you won't irritate you so much, like they didn't irritate you when you were first together, right?
Right. I also think as you do things together, you should be able to do some things apart. I think, especially for men, we need our space. So I always recommend, to people, hey, if you got a man cave and you need to get away for a couple hours, do that. Don't sit around each other, hating each other or mad at each other. Just, get away. And I think that's always a good thing. I think everyone needs their space.
Oh, absolutely. Women need their own space. They need their own good bathtub time, and they also need to have a night out with their girlfriends so they can do all the girlfriend talk. So I totally agree with you. I absolutely agree. Now, Archie, help us understand, and I love to talk about forgiveness here on the Forgiveness Solution. Let's talk about forgiveness and letting stuff go in a long-term relationship.
I think the biggest thing with forgiveness is, unfortunately things happen in relationships. And I think for men it's harder for us to forgive. I think women are easier to forgive. But I always say 3 or 4 things when I'm talking to people about this. First of all, let go of resentment, And we do understand that's not an easy process, but, again, like I talked earlier, if you're forgiving somebody, I also recommend you give them space and patience. So I think that's a good thing. I also think you should switch to focus on blaming others to understanding yourself. Because sometimes you forgiving somebody, you're not really forgiving them. You just don't want to talk about it, which goes into my third thing. You need to, if it's a serious issue and it's something you need counseling and need to talk to about, you need to get that help. And then finally, I think, after you forgave, get over it, move on with your life.
Right, start new patterns. When I talk about forgiveness, I also talk about expectations all the time. And sometimes, most of the time, we run around with expectations of others, and we haven't even told them that we expect of them this, and this. And when they don't live up to those expectations, we get really mad or have smoldering resentment, especially in long-term relationships, whether it's, you don't take the garbage out. Like every week the garbage is coming, but you don't take it out. I ask and you don't do it, and then I build up resentment. And so you really need to talk about your expectations in a relationship, like a check-in time, right?
Right. Again, it goes back to communication. And if somebody doesn't, and it's just like in the military, if I go to my commander and I'm not quite understanding what he's talking about, I'm looking for further guidance. And I think that's the key to a relationship. If you feel like you need more information, or you want to tell him or her your expectations, then you need to actually tell them your expectations. However you do it, you can write it down, put it on a PowerPoint slide.
PowerPoint, I love that in a marriage. That'd be awesome.
Yes, that's what you need to, you need to let them know that. And I think a lot of times people just don't do that. Again, it goes back to patience, too. People don't have the patience to go out and actually explain what they want or what they need.
Well, I'm going to just come from the woman's perspective a little bit, because that's, my world, is that lots of times I find that women, and we talk about it among ourselves a little bit, like, why don't they just get a clue? Like, they should know, they should do this, they should be more romantic, they should be, help me out around the house more, and, I don't understand why they don't. And so we have all this stuff, and we build it up in our heads, and boy, the husband can walk through the room and we're already angry. And they just walk through the room. So I agree with you that it kind of comes back to the communication. Men are not mind readers, and either are females. Like, women don't know exactly what you're thinking. And so communication is key. I think you brought up a really good point about patience. It's, we kind of lose patience over time, right? We probably have more patience when the first couple years together, but by year 15, 17, 20, we're probably less patient.
Yeah, and most of the time in relationships, you are. It's just you've been knowing each other forever. These expectations you may not even know, but you know her routine. She knows your routine, and it becomes. I guess what I'm trying to say is that basically it becomes, since everything is so automatic right now, that we don't take the time out to even, discuss anything, and it becomes this. He should know this, and she should know that, but the reality of it, you've never discussed it.
Right. I agree with that. And also when you're raising kids, right, throw in raising children or having an elderly parent and you're in that sandwich generation. It adds so much more stress, and your significant other really should be your oasis from that stress. And so it's really important, and Archie has said it clearly, is to communicate and your expectations. Some people might not want to meet your expectations, at least give them a chance to tell you whether they're willing to or not, or they might not have the skill to meet your expectation, right? So, Archie, you bring up a really good point about patience. I think that is just hitting in my heart that lots of times we just lose patience with others, and especially, what's the old saying, you hurt the ones you love?
Yes.
Yeah. So Archie's also writing a book a companion book to go with his book about all the characteristics of females, but this one's about men. Now, who would you recommend read that book? The women, or the men read that book, or both?
I recommend both because I would say this for men, it gives them an idea of the different character personalities that they might deal with in relationships, especially the beginning of a relationship, and long term too. For women, it also gives them an idea of what type of character personality they may be. I think it's a real good book. I think it's more of a couple's book. I think as a couple, you should read the book together, and you'll get a better understanding of each other. Because, you'll read and come and say, oh, yeah, you do act like that. So, that is a character personality that you possess. So, I do recommend the book for both.
Oh, I'm really excited about reading this book. Now, in my book, The Forgiveness Solution, the step-by-step process to let it go, I talk about my real life experience. And yes, I'm a reverend. Yes, I'm a mom of 6 kids, but I'm also a divorced woman. And I'm remarried, and what a difference it was. And I look back at myself, and I see my mistakes. Now, if you're in a long-term relationship and you've really messed up, what do you suggest in your books for that? What do you suggest about helping through that to avoid the divorces?
The first thing is it goes back to communication. First of all, y'all talk to one another. But I also think the best thing, and a lot of people refuse to do this, is to go get counseling. Their relation.
In my experience, that has been more of a male thing. Do you see it that way also, that men don't really want to go to counseling?
Yes, it is more of a, I think it's a male ego thing that they don't want to go to counseling. But I was like that too, so I had to go because we was on our way to divorce land too. So I did get help. And it put me in the right direction to kind of understand what she was going through, and she kind of understood what I was going through. So in the end, we're still married, so it did work out for me.
And I'm so glad that it did. And look at the wealth of experience you get to share with so many people.
Yes.
Well, I talk about in my second marriage, yes, this reverend has been married 3 times. In my second marriage, I went to counseling with my husband, really, and this is from the girl's standpoint, I really wanted the counselor to call him out. Why? Because I really wanted the counselor to prove he was wrong and I was right. And I really wasn't there for the right reasons. And I felt later, after I understood that, what a lost opportunity I had. And luckily, a good counselor later on helped point that out to me in a very loving way, that women tend to want to be right and women desperately want an I'm sorry.
I think it goes both ways, but yeah, I think you expect for the counselor to get on to the other person, and it doesn't really work like that. What he or she is trying to find out is basically what the problem is and how to fix it. What are the tools you need to fix it? So, I've seen that too, where, they want you to take sides, but no, that's not the way to do it.
Now, counselors really are your life referee. They kind of step in, and they are not emotionally connected to your drama, whether that be drama you brought in with you, family history, right? Because we all come from something. Right. We only know where we've been, and we kind of bring those tools with us. Some have better tools than others. We're expecting a counselor to point fingers, and you're right, Archie, that is not their job. Their job is to help you grow in the tools, exactly what you said, and also to help bring you guys together in agreement and remember all the lovely, wonderful things you respect and love about the other person.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, Archie, I happen to say I'm so glad we agree on so much. All right. Well, Archie, I'm just really thrilled about both of your books, that you do this speaking and that you really get to help people have healthy, happy relationships. Because when we feel warm and cozy at home, then the rest of the stress that's outside of our doors is easier to handle. Now, some of the stress that happens in relationships, and I mentioned it briefly, is when you're dealing with, children and their behavior, and, teenagers are a whole lovely set of different issues.
Yes.
But then also you get sandwiched in lots of times taking care of your parents. I know that you're going to say this comes back to communication, but any other tips that you could give a couple that's somewhat sandwiched in that?
Well, I think, you've got to have time for yourself as a couple. I think that just going out and doing different things and getting away from some of this stuff, because I think what you're saying, children, job stress, elderly family members, all those are variables that are factors into the relationship. So you just got to find time for yourself and you as a couple, you all as a couple, to get out and do things. I think that'll help a whole lot, because it's really nothing you can do about it until the children are old enough to be out on their own, and you got to continue to take care of your parents. So I think just finding that space and time to go out and do different things for yourself.
And like you mentioned before, always keep that excitement in your relationship, and that's really, really hard. Now, I am going to bring up one tough subject because actually this came up in a recent conversation with some other women around, that what if there is infidelity, and how does a couple get over such a tough situation?
I would say this, for the men, it's probably it's a lot more difficult to get over. I think women are quicker to forgive a man for infidelity, for cheating. I think the biggest thing is to first of all find out why the person did what they did. Once you find out why they did what they did, then you need to communicate that to one another. And then I think you also need to try to get some type of help and see what else you can do to try to build a relationship up again, and go from there.
I agree, and I think so. I just wrote down 3 tips while you were talking about that, and I absolutely agree. Why did it happen in the first place? Like there was a breakdown somewhere, and then 2, communication. Again, we've used that word a few times, but it is. I don't think we can emphasize it enough. And 3, there are really good people with really good educations out there that want to help you have a happier, healthy relationship. So take advantage of that for sure. Get counseling and all of those types of things. And also, when you're looking for a counselor, it's okay to interview a counselor. They might not be a good fit for one or both of you, so you can interview somebody else. If you both need to feel comfortable with a counselor, and I would even suggest that each separate person has their own counselor, their own personal space to scream in. That's my personal little tagline for that. But Archie, thank you for those 3 tips. Also, I want to go back to some other tips about healthy long-term relationships. Let's re-emphasize those. Communication again. Compromise. Now, isn't that difficult? And then patience. So thank you for those tips. And then, it's really important to stay in a loving place with your partner and be, forgiving, but compassionate and empathy. I think that's also very important, and understand that they're on their own walk and their own place, and you guys are trying to do it together.
Yes.
Yes. All right. And Archie, where would people find you, and where would they find your current book? And let us know if somebody wants to get a hold of you, have you come speak, anything like that. Let us know where we can find you.
Okay, and before we do that, lastly, I would like to leave your listeners with the acronym RED, because in my opinion, we all should live by this. Resilience, being able to bounce back without quitting or getting into your feelings. Endurance, being able to deal with situations without giving up. And last, determination, have a purpose or resolution, whatever it takes to make it. And for my book, you can find my book, That's the Way She Is, What Jack needs to know about Jill on Amazon, your Barnes and Nobles. You can get it straight from the publishing company, Golden Brick Road Publishing at www.goldenbrickroad.pub. You can check me out on social media at Archie Lee, Twitter at Archie Lee. On Facebook, yes.
Who isn't
Facebook,
on Facebook?
I should have said Facebook, Archie Lee, and Twitter, Archie Lee. You can go to my website, www.goldenbrickroad.com, to find the book. If you need to contact me, you can contact me at www.manchovianprince@yahoo.com. Manchovian, ManchovianPrince @yahoo.com.
Okay, we'll definitely have to put that information in the comments below the podcast so that you can find Archie. Archie, also thank you for that wonderful acronym. I have actually never heard that before. Resilience, endurance, determination, RED. Live your life, RED. I have to tell you, I might have to take that one. That was just lovely.
You can use it.
Thank you so much, Archie. All right. Also, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Archie, thank you for imparting your wisdom on long-term healthy relationships and how to keep it healthy. And also, if anybody wants to find my book, The Forgiveness Solution, you can also find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all major bookstores, and also through my publisher, Sacred Stories. Also find me. My website is revmisty.com. Also Facebook, Instagram, and of course Twitter. But please get a hold of me. I would love to hear your personal forgiveness stories because the power of forgiveness is amazing. Have a great and blessed day.
I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss more than this. I wish you love.